Hello, this is John Simonson, Wild Rivers Trout Unlimited chapter, and today we are doing a presentation with Craig Roberts, the Wisconsin DNR Senior Fishery Biologist for Burnett and Washburn counties. And we're going to be talking about the Clam River Fishery area that the Wild Rivers chapter adopted earlier this year. So I will turn it over to Craig. Thank you for doing this, Craig.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk about um, a, s- a trout system that's near and dear to my heart, and also a system that is special in Burnett County. So today, like John said, my name's Craig Roberts, and I'll be talking about the Clam River fishery area, mainly the North Fork of the Clam River, and I will talk about surveys we've completed there, our recent partnership with TU and the Adopt a Fishery Area program, and some recent habitat work that has come from that partnership. But first, I want to talk about why the North Fork of the Clam River is special. So, for me personally, it's a place of first. So when I first moved to Wisconsin with my wife in 2014, the North Fork of the Clam River is one of the first places we fished, and it's actually the first place myself and my wife caught wild brook trout, and that was, you know, at that time we didn't have a canoe or a boat, and we wanted to fish, and I knew about this system from coworkers, and I went out there with my wife, and we were able to both the first day catch some nice wild brook trout. And so, in addition to that, I know I've talked to other people who grew up fishing this system, and it's special to them as well. Um, in addition, it's in our DNR Brook Trout Reserves program. So within Washburn and Burnett County, give me 1 second. I need to move this. There we go. So within Washburn and Burnett County, it is one of four brook trout reserves, and it's the only one I'm aware of in this part of the county. Um, the most of for the North Fork, it's from Spring Lake Road, which is Washburn Burnett County border, to Heart Lake Road. So it's not a huge section of that system. And then the South Fork as well is part of the brook trout reserves. We've also tested the genetics of brook trout in this area and found that they are native wild Wisconsin genetics, which is becoming more and more unique in our state. So that's why the Clam River, North Fork of the Clam River is special. I'm going to jump in. Like I said, I'm going to talk about survey assessment. So in 2024, we did kind of a broad assessment of the North Fork in addition to two trend sites. I'll kind of show that spatially in a couple slides. And then I'll talk about the Adopt a Fishery Area work by TU that we've partnered with, and the recent habitat work that's resulted from that. So to give a background, the North Fork of the Clam River is located in southeast corner of Burnett County. There's roughly 25 miles of class one, two, and three trout stream. We sample mostly in the class one and class two sections, and there's both brook and brown trout present and all natural reproduction. There's no stocking that has occurred in this system recently. There has been some in the past, but not in these sections. And then the Clam River fishery area itself comprises 2,523 acres. So you can see in this map, it's a pretty broad area, and it covers a mix of public and private land. And this is the sites we did. So in 2024 on the North Fork, can you see my cursor, John?
Yes.
Okay. So going all the way to Spring Lake Road, which is in the southeast corner. We started there and we worked our way all the way to the second crossing of Sand Road. So that was 9 sites. That's shown here by the triangles. And then within that, we have 2 trend sites. We have a Heart Lake Road trend site that occurs every year, and the Sand Road trend site for the North Fork of the Clam River. We also have trend sites on Spring Brook, which is a tributary, and Sand Creek, which is another tributary. So how do we survey? We use our general DNR stream survey methods, which is backpack electrofishing and barge electrofishing. For the North Fork of the Clam River, it's mostly barge electrofishing. It's a big enough system that a barge is our most efficient way of getting fish. So we collect both brown and brook trout, and in some sections we collect all the fish. And then as so that's what's shown in the south the excuse me, that's what's shown on the bottom picture. And then the picture on the right shows what we do at the end, which is measure all the fish and put them right back in the stream. This is my actually my supervisor with a nice brown trout from this summer. And jumping right into the results. So this is for all the brook trout we collected in 2024 from the North Fork of the Clam River. Most of our brook trout in this system are found upstream of County Highway H. So that tends to be the cooler section, but that's just where we find the most brook trout in the system. We also know that they're in competition with brown trout throughout most of the river. We find brown trout even in the uppermost stretches of the North Fork. The average size has actually increased through time. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but right now it's 7.4 inches. And for those who fish it regularly, the biggest we've seen of any survey recently was 13.8 inches. So that's a very nice wild brook trout that we got a few. Well, that one was several years ago now. Okay, so this graph shows basically the past 3 times we've sampled brook trout comprehensively in the North Fork of the Clam River. You have percentages on the vertical axis, and then you have lengths on the horizontal axis. And blue and green represent 2012 and 2018, or excuse me, blue and orange represent 2012 and 2018. Green represents the most recent survey in 2024. So you can see that in 2012 and 2018, we had more fish, and our average size was around, probably in the 5 to 6 inch category, whereas now we have less brook trout and they're bigger. Having a better size structure is great, but we don't want our brook trout numbers to drop too low in this system because of that competition, like I discussed in the last slide. Okay, brown trout. So numbers wise, they're based on our sampling. There's 6 brown trout for every brook trout throughout the North Fork of the Clam River. Now, to be fair, like I said, most of our brook trout come upstream of County Highway H, and they are very abundant brown trout downstream of County Highway H. So, when you do the whole numbers, if I compared the uppermost sites, this ratio would probably be lower, but for the all of the North Fork, brown trout are much more abundant than brook trout. Now, we did see a decrease from 2018 of roughly 50%. So that could be driven by harvest, that could be driven by environmental factors. Our recent drought may be changing where the brown trout are locating. Um, I'm not exactly sure there, but we've definitely seen a decrease in what we caught from 2018. At the same time, we've seen a larger average size. So it increased to about 9.4 inches. I'll show you a just like the brook trout, a brown trout slide with links next. And then again, a measuring stick for those who fish it. It is the biggest we have seen is 21.8 inches, which is a very nice brown trout. This one I'm holding in the picture was actually 20.5 inches. So that's the biggest I've personally seen since I've been here sampling this stream. Okay. So similar to the brook trout slide, this is our brown trout slide for lengths and percentages. Again, blue and orange represent 2012 and 2018, and you can see it for those years, the average size was probably pretty low. It's most of our fish were 5, 6, 7 inches. And then now, most recently, we see more 7-inch brown trout and more 10 to 13-inch brown trout. So that's a good thing. We probably want some lower densities of brown trout throughout this stream because for even in 2018, you saw we got over 1,000 in our sample. So they're very, very abundant. Okay. So I talked about kind of broadly all of those sites through time. Now I'm going to talk about the upper trend site and then the downstream trend site and compare those. So this is a complicated graph, but I'll talk us through it. So on this graph, we have a catch rate, catch per mile of stream, which is a measure of relative abundance. And then we have water temperature as well on the right axis. And then we have years. So these are catch rates of brook and brown trout through time. And brook is shown in blue, and brown trout are shown in orange. So two main takeaways from this graph. First, for the most part, we can see that brook trout and brown trout abundance relate fairly well to water temperature changes through time. Now, these are water temperatures we take the day of, so it's not like a hobo logger. It's just what we observe that day. But you can see 2015 is a very nice example where that was the lowest temperature we've observed in this time, and that was when we had the highest brook trout abundance. And then more recently, we've had warmer water temperatures at the Heart Lake Road trend site, and we've had pretty steady higher numbers of brown trout. The other takeaway from this slide is that in the past, roughly 2011 to 2016, we had higher abundances of brook trout. And most recently, it's been very low starting in 2017. So that concerns me. That's, we want to see better numbers of brook trout at these upper sites, especially within the brook trout reserve area of the North Fork of the Clam River. So, that's something we'll continue to monitor at this site and hopefully see changes through time that they start increasing again. But that's just the trend we're seeing at this time. A lower amount of brook trout is becoming more common. And then the age zero catch. So this graph shows just age zero, which is 4 inch and under brook trout and brown trout. And same thing, it's the catch per mile of stream through time. So same time frame, 2011 to 2024. You see brown trout, they have some good years and bad years, but in general, brown trout they have much better recruitment than the brook trout as well. Okay. Going downstream to the Sand Road trend site, we're going to talk about a much different abundance of brown trout. So some of the years we had similar abundances of brook trout and brown trout for the Heart Lake Road trend site. That is not the case downstream. basically, when you get downstream of County Highway H, this is more of what we see, a very brown trout dominated system. And that's probably at that point more related to water temperature than anything else. So this just the sheer abundance, we averaged about 455 fish per mile of stream at Heart Lake Road, and this one is about 855 mile fish per mile for Sand Road. So in general, they're way more abundant downstream, brown trout. And you can see 2018, for example, in this slide, brown trout get as high as 1,400 uh, fish per mile of stream. So my main point here is that, downstream brown trout are by far the dominant trout species, and then brook trout become very rare. You see in this slide as well that you see a few little blue bars. That is our brook trout, adult brook trout abundance. So much lower than Heart Lake Road. So that's kind of a summary of our data that we collected. I've been mulling this idea for a while, and most recently I proposed a catch and release regulation for brook trout, and that's going to be from County Highway H to Spring Lake Road, with a goal of increasing brook trout abundance within that brook trout reserve area. So, we'd continue to allow the harvest of brown trout, but the goal would be to increase brook trout abundance any way we can in those uppermost stretches of the North Fork of the Clam River. So that kind of finishes our kind of my data review for the North Fork. Now I'm going to talk more about the Adopt a Fishery Area program for the Clam River Fishery Area. So last fall, John contacted myself and Nate Thomas about doing the Adopt a Fishery Area program for the Clam River Fishery Area and the White River Fishery Area. And um, I had heard of the program, but we never had anyone offer to do it around here. In general, we don't have the population that you have in southern Wisconsin, where I've heard more about these programs. But TU Wild Rivers, John, contacted me and offered to try and do this, and so far it's been a great partnership. Ken Benoit, who's on the TU Wild Rivers board, has been our local coordinator. So he has been helping with the southernmost members of the TU Wild Rivers, gathering help from them on the work days that they've had and plan to have. And then lastly, so thanks to those two gentlemen, John as well. But lastly, Jeremiah Fisk has become a good partner in all of this as well. So he's my coworker out of Hayward, and Jeremiah has been working with these gentlemen and myself to kind of coordinate it all together to do work days. And most recently, or in the near future, you guys are going to do chainsaw training on the Clam River Fishery area, so you can start doing brushing and some other work as well. Um, and then I should mention that we finally got the the Adopt a Fishery Area signs and posted those, a few weeks ago, I believe it was now. So it's become a good program for a system that, doesn't garner a lot of attention typically, but we're going to be able to partner and continue to do some good work. Part of the program with the Adopt a Fishery Area is that 3-year commitment and either 100 hours of work or $3,000 donation, and TU has done both so far. So they've donated money towards projects, but they've also been on site to do some work. we had a work day where myself, Jeremiah, and several members of TU, John was there, Ken was there, came together in late June this summer, and we met up and Jeremiah did some habitat work in the stream, and then I myself and Ken led crews to do some access trail maintenance and or creation that I've wanted to do for a long time, but honestly never had the help or people to do it. So it was great to gather people. This was us at lunch that day, but to gather people at this parking lot and start doing some work that I've wanted to do for a long time, um, it was just fantastic. And here's some pictures from that day. So here uh, we have Jeremiah on the left, and he was putting in root wads, installing them in some areas that needed some more woody debris. And then on the right is just one picture of, I think it's Ken, and I forget the gentleman's name with the brown sweatshirt, but those two were cutting access trails, clearing some brush. We have fallen trees, just general maintenance that we don't always get to do that allows anglers to access the North Fork a little easier. So going forward, what do I see going on in the Clam River fishery area? Well, obviously we want to continue to monitor the trout population, especially the brook trout, continue to utilize Trout Unlimited and other volunteers to work on the Clam River and its tributaries. So that's been amazing to me. Like John continues to get people contacting him interested in helping. Honestly didn't realize how many people were interested in the North Fork of the Clam River until this adoptive fishery area program started. And then I want to continue to identify all of the spawning areas. That's one thing I should mention too, that you guys last fall um, started to look at spawning areas on the property. And I'd like to, have those mapped out so that we can use that for our future habitat work and in protection of some areas within the property. And then potentially in the future, not right now, but when that new regulation is in place for a while, I'd like to creel the fishery area, maybe using creel boxes to assess that brook trout regulation and how people feel about it. And, are they harvesting brown trout? So that's something down the road I'd like to look at for the Clam River. So, to those listening, John, whoever, if you have questions, feel free to email me at craig.roberts@wisconsin.gov, or you can give that number a call, and I'm willing to talk about this fishery area or any other trout questions anyone may have.
Greg, thank you very much. That was awesome. The insights on what you've done on the river with the trout is amazing to see. It's great. We understand better the Clam River, the brook trout, and the habitat and everything. And on the just mention the Wild River Trout Unlimited chapter has already donated $4,000 this year to the Clam River State Fishery Area. And we've got a ton of hours, and we'll be doing a lot more with you and Jeremiah on the river this fall and into next year. So thank you very much. That was awesome. And I think a lot of people will enjoy seeing this and realize we have a lot of support coming out of Burnett County from fellow fly fishermen and fishermen that want to fish the river. So thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, and thanks to TU for, partnering with us on this property in particular, because like I said, it's a unique resource for Burnett County and in our area. And a lot of people don't necessarily know about it, but it's obviously special to a lot of people too, because yourself and myself have been getting a lot of contacts interested in helping on the property and in the stream. So it's great. It's a great resource, and I'm glad people are very interested in keeping it going and protecting it. So
I'll end by saying I got so pumped at our June uh, on the river when the three gentlemen from, I think, Cumberland that were helping us that day were so thrilled, so excited to have Wild Rivers and the DNR working on the Clam River. That really got me pumped up. I mean, they were elated that we were down there giving the river attention.
those were gentlemen I'd never met, and that was
Neither have
great.
I.
You know,
They
yeah.
actually switched over to our chapter, so that's pretty cool.
Then and I should mention that we met another gentleman who was fishing, and he switched as well. It sounds like so. Yeah, that's fantastic. You
Yeah,
know,
and I've
it's
been
great.
in, that's Perry Palin, and I've been in contact with him, and that's his home river. So he loves it. So it's great. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, everybody, for listening.